All right, all right. Super excited for today. Now, for those of you all who have been rocking with me for a while, I think I'm upping the production quality of these, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to say it too early in the session because we'll see how it ends up going. Anyway, welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Maceo Owens. I go by the ERG Homegirl here on LinkedIn. Super excited for this session. I do want to say, just at the very beginning of this, because after this session ends, the recording typically lives on LinkedIn. But I will just say, if you're not on this LinkedIn live call, you will not find it on LinkedIn. It'll be cut like right after this section. And that's because the full recording will be available only within the ERG Champs community. All right. We're going to talk about the ERG Champs community, but just know, actually, we have some people here. Put ERG Champs in the chat if you are part of the ERG Champs community. Can we get a shout out to you all for seeing the evolution over time? I think I saw a few people who are a part of the community. Therefore, like I said, that's where this recording is going to live, just as a heads up. So, jumping right into it. Now, I mentioned a quick intro of myself, but just a little bit more for those who have never ever encountered me. My name is Maceo Owens, she, her pronouns. And like I said, all things ERGs. I've been an ERG leader, ERG program manager, and now via the ERG movement, ERGs kind of take over my life, but in the best way possible. I have created the ERG development model, the ERG movement model, which truly I believe is going to change the ERG space. And honestly, that's what I'm hoping to do via the ERG movement. I'm trying to make more efficient and productive ERGs easier for everyone. And I know just by testing it out that by running your ERG program like a business, this is how you're going to be able to do ERGs much more efficiently. Okay, yay, I see some ERG champs coming through. I will just say, like, the comments, they're delayed on my side. So I was like, dang, we don't have any ERG champs in here. That kind of hurt a little bit. But no, shouts out to you all for joining. And even for the newbies here, like I mentioned, I think if you scroll up, you should see the link I put in the chat, or just go to ergmovement.com and go to the community piece. That's how you're able to join for free. Okay. A couple other things about me. I've been featured in Forbes for my work with ERGs and a few other publications in this ERG Champs community. Actually, I have to update this slide. I think that we're well over 400 ERG leaders and program managers. And I have a ton of free resources between the podcast, the blog posts, the templates, even the ERG Idea Hub that has over 1,000 examples of ERG programming across companies, across industries, across the globe. Again, I just want to make this easier for us in the space. Having been an ERG program manager and even currently with the ERG movement, program managing a few ERG programs, I feel like it should be easier than what it is. And it doesn't have to be as difficult as it's been, long story short. So that's my ramble on me. Super excited to get into today. And I will just say, within the ERG champ space, so for those of us on this call, in the employee resource group space, I should say, it's a very tight-knit community, especially for people in the ERG space that are actually interested in data. So I say that to say, you're around family here when I ask this next question. So it's okay if you can ask, if if you're not where you want to be. But I'm curious, if you had to rank on a scale from 1 to 5 where you currently sit with data. And actually, let me move myself around here. Whoops. Exit full screen. Yeah. Let me move myself around here so you can see. If you had to rank on a scale from 1 to 5, where your program currently is with data, what would you say? Now, it's okay if you're not a 5. Most people that I encounter are not a 5. As a matter of fact, actually, it just occurred to me. I don't even know if I think that you all can hear me when I go off camera like that. But let me know in the chat if you heard me like when I was just talking and I took myself off the screen. Like I said, I'm trying to up the production value, but at the same time, I'm still learning and figuring this whole thing out. Okay, so I see a range of answers here, and it's okay that we are not all 5s. Trust me. Okay, I think that you all can hear while I still do this. Yay. Okay, this is great. This is great to hear. Much appreciated. It's okay that we are not all fives. I understand. Now, that being said, while I understand, because a lot of the resources that have been out here for years, for decades even, fun fact, we're going into 60 years of ERGs being a thing. So shouts out to the ERG space, but you would think that ERG data would be a lot further ahead than it is. But I'm not blaming you all. Like I said, the resources that have been out there has not been the greatest. And that's why I said for me as an ERG program manager and as a someone who's helping multiple companies right now, I really just want to make this information more accessible to you all. Now, how did we get here with this topic in general? I just want to say I've been wanting to talk about data for the past year at least. So this, as a fun fact, is a breakdown of all the pain points that you all are experiencing. So by joining the ERG Champs community, you actually get to like rank your pain points, and as you all can see, data is in the top 3, and it wasn't always the case. Actually, I'll say even within the past like 2 to 3 months, metrics and data have moved up the rank on pain points for an ERG. And you'll probably see some things on here that you resonate with too. And you're like, not that surprised on where we're sitting with these pain points. But that being said, at first, when I saw this, I was super excited because I was like, wow, I have a solution for this. I have a dashboard and metrics that I've been using. Until all of a sudden, once I started thinking more about what does it mean to bring a session to life to you all, to really be able to break down um, how to create your own dashboard. And this is a topic that has truly had me stressed for about the past year. Even then, part of it was realizing that these top 5 right here were very connected. Actually, all of them are connected, but truly the fact that the biggest pain points within the ERG space were all so tightly connected, it was a clear issue to me. Now, before I jump into the solution for this, essentially, I'm curious if you all have ever heard me speak about the 3 Ps of ERGs. Put 3P in the chat. I'll give it a second to come through. Put 3P in the chat if you've ever heard me speak about the 3 Ps of ERGs. And like I said, the chat's a little bit delayed on my end. So I'm sure I will see a couple of 3Ps come through because I see some familiar faces here on this stream. Now, I bring that up because for those of you who don't have any context on the 3Ps, as mentioned, I believe that running an ERG program, like running a business, it's truly the solution to having ERGs done more efficiently. So that being said, I feel like in order to do that, I need to listen to people that are successful at business to be able to learn how to run an ERG program like a business. So that being said, one of my favorite business people, his name is Marcus Lemonis. He is the host of this show, The Prophet. I highly recommend that you check it out if you haven't. As a matter of fact, I was thinking before this session, I think that we'll probably have to do a watch party, like just as a group, as an ERG Champs fam, we need to do a watch party of just one episode so you all can see what I mean when I say watching him go in and fix businesses with his 3Ps of business, how it aligns so well with ERG programs. But that being said, the 3Ps that he uses to fix businesses of all backgrounds is people, process, product. Very similarly within the ERG space, I just felt like, again, if I should probably listen to someone who's very successful at business. Who am I to say that this thing that works from businesses of all backgrounds is not going to work for my little business, aka an ERG program that I'm running? So using the same framework, but adapting it a little bit. I like to say the 3Ps of ERGs is purpose, process, programming. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, quick overview: purpose, understanding why your program exists and also why it doesn't exist, like the parameters of the program. Overall, what are you aiming to do, and getting aligned with your executives in terms of why this program exists. And then having a strategy to speak to how you're going to reach that overall vision over the course of some years. Then process, actually baking out what does it look like on how ERG leaders are going to make this happen, the roles, the governance, as you all probably know them as. When it comes to processes, I like to use the illustration. If I were to go volunteer at a food bank, they're not just going to tell me to go do with no clarity on what do means, how many things to put in this place, all the things. They're going to give me step-by-step instructions, which oftentimes that does not exist for the ERG space. And then, so that's process. And actually, I'll say data lives under the process piece, because not only do you have to know how to do your roles, but you need to know what metrics exist to say if you're successful in doing your roles. So that's where we sit in our conversations today. Programming is really around how to do the output of the ERG program. So events, communications, initiatives, how to do those better. And essentially, I bring this up because once I realized the tie between those pain points that we mentioned and these 3 Ps and really understanding how intertwined it was, you can see why I was a little bit stressed. Okay. Now, let me just paint the picture for you all. I did this last night, and honestly, this was my first time kind of visualizing what it looks like in terms of how closely knit the 3 Ps are with all of the pain points that exist, which is why I'm so happy just to share this framework with you all. Because if you're experiencing any of these issues, which I'm guessing you have at least one, at least the data one, it's probably rooted in one, two, or even potentially all three of those 3 Ps. So feel free to take a screenshot of this, because again, if there are some things in particular that come up, I do have likely things on the website that speak to how to solve for each of these individually. Now, again, realizing all this and realizing that data is just part of this equation. And really, I didn't say it earlier, but the 3 Ps, they are meant to go in order. So again, purpose, process, product, programming. Whoops, not the other 3 Ps. Purpose, process, programming. Unfortunately, for many organizations now, they jump straight into programming. So they completely ignored the purpose and process piece. It's really not funny, but it's just something that I see so often in companies. That's why most of them, when they launch their ERG program, they'll just be like, hey, what events are you all doing? What are we posting in channel? And that's why eventually there's this burnout. And again, all these other things that are linked here, ultimately. So it is meant to be attacked in order. Now, that being said, when we talk about data in particular, if we're doing it in order, and you see here that the 2 things that data links to is purpose and process more than anything, that means that when people say, or people don't have any data or don't have good data, it's really the result of not having a clear purpose. And I'm going to word this, but I need to get into this before we go into the visualization piece, because we have to get on the same page here. When you don't have a clear purpose, that means that you don't even know what to measure to speak to your ERG program's purpose. And let's just use the word vision. Let's strike the word purpose, because that might confuse some people. If you don't have a clear program vision, then you're not going to know the metrics to measure to justify that vision. You're not going to know where to start with pulling metrics that justify that vision. And you're not going to know how to articulate, how to storytell progress towards reaching that vision. Put a 5 in the chat if that makes sense, if what I'm saying makes sense so far. Another way, and I'm going to repeat this one. I should just give you all a second to read it on your own, but I'll say it and then I'll repeat it. Okay? In terms of where data fits in when it comes to this whole 3 Ps piece. When you don't have your program's purpose, when you don't have the why, then you won't be able to articulate the how, the processes that ERG leaders do to reach your why, much less improve the what you're programming with data and articulate progress towards your why. That was a lot, even me reading back. So I'll just say, feel free to screenshot and just like meditate on this. But I'm going to read it just how it is so that maybe it'll resonate a little bit. When you don't have the why, then you won't be able to articulate the how to reach your why, much less improve the what with data and articulate progress towards your why. See, it kind of made sense. Well, it still makes sense. But like I said, this might be a very complicated sentence. But don't worry, we're going to break it down because really this only that last piece of that sentence, articulate progress towards your why. That's a lot of where the data visualization piece comes in. But you can see where there's other things that have to take place in order for the data visualization to actually make an impact. I'm trying to give it a second to let it resonate. But it's okay. Like I said, we'll touch on this when it comes to it. So I was a little bit stressed when I realized that this sentence here, which I've had in my notes for like the past 8 months, honestly, when I realized this sentence, this is really what had me stressed. Okay. Because I realized that just a dashboard is not going to solve for the bigger problems here. And then I went on tour and say tour. I like interaction. I don't know if y'all can tell, even though it's very delayed. I do like some interaction to see it. So say tour in the chat if you actually were able to go to one of the stops, or even just say what stop you were able to go to. Hopefully we have a few people who are able to join on this call. Actually, I know for a fact we do. But that being said, when we went on tour, I asked people, hey, raise your hand if these are the things that you currently measure. Now you all don't have to say anything in the chat. You don't have to put yourself out there. But I'll just say I saw it on the tour for myself. So many people raised their hands. So I had a hunch of how bad it was, but I didn't realize like truly where we were starting with all of this. Okay? Which really made me think it's just a lot of questions. Okay. Trying not to ramble, trying to get to it. So glad that I moved these from being 30 minutes to an hour because my goodness, I have a lot to say. Ultimately, I say all that to say this is why I have been putting off this session for the past year. There's a lot behind it. And ultimately, while I wanted to get into this dashboard a year ago, granted, it didn't look as pretty a year ago, but I did want to get into it a year ago. I realized that at the end of the day, this is just one piece of the puzzle. It's an important piece, but it's just one piece of the bigger puzzle. And I knew we had a lot of ground to cover, and there's nowhere else on the internet that literally talks about what I'm telling you all now in regards to ERGs. So all that to say, I get why this session matters, but just know that building a dashboard will not save your ERG program. I just want to put it out here. That is not the solution to all of your problems when it comes to an ERG program. Okay. I heard a lot of people who feel like the data is the end all saving grace that they need, but truly there's probably some bigger things at play. Quick plug with the ERG Kickstarter. Actually, no, we don't call it that anymore. The ERG Fresh Start program. We can actually help revamp your ERG program in 90 days and going through those 3 Ps. So, got to throw in a plug there. Anyway, in order to visualize your data, so that's what we're kind of talking about here, data visualization. Actually, when I wrote this out, originally I had it as steps to data visualization, but honestly, I want to make it very clear in what we're doing. So data visualization didn't seem like the right thing to call this part. Because again, just because it's visualized, what does that mean? Is that success? Not really. So then I said steps to data storytelling, because yes, we don't just want it visualized. We want to make it easier for us to tell the story of our ERG program and where it's come from and where it's at and where it's going. But even that is not enough. I would say maybe data usage, because we don't just want to tell a story of how far we've come, but we also want to actually implement the data to actually make change. And when I say make change, I mean to improve our engagement and to improve our progress towards our overall vision at the end of the day. But even then, I guess I kind of just gave it away. Just putting it as data usage, it just didn't feel like enough of what we're trying to do here. So we're going to call this how to reach your ERG program's vision, ultimately, okay? 7 steps. I just actually put out an article last week on these 7 steps that really help you to, again, see how to get to this visualization piece. Free of cost, by the way. We'll talk about that. Free of cost, which I think is an important factor here because I am a believer in maximalization, getting the most out of the things that already exist versus spending your limited budget on things. Anyway, we'll leave it at that for now. We'll touch more on it in a second. Okay, so how to reach your program's vision. Thing one, you have to clarify what your program vision is. We just talked about this. I won't sit on it for too long, but I cannot iterate this enough. If you don't have clarity on what this ERG program is trying to accomplish, you are not going to be able to select the metrics that speak to progress towards trying to accomplish that vision. And most people I speak to, most of them, and when I say most, I don't mean like 3 out of 5. I mean like, let's say out of 100 people I speak to, like 90 don't. They maybe even more, honestly, don't have the answer to this question. Although we think we do, we don't have alignment with our executives on what it is. We haven't communicated to ERG leaders, which that also brings some frustration when ERG leaders think the program exists for a different reason. So anyway, you have to clearly articulate, why is this program here? After that, then you can work backwards to say, well, what tasks will need to be accomplished on a consistent cadence on a regular basis in order to get us closer to that vision? What needs to be done? Just the tasks, okay? We're not talking about baking out the roles and trying to fit certain tasks under certain roles. For this, we're just saying, what are all the things that would need to be done here at this company to get us closer to reaching that vision with this program? Next up, governance. How will we know if the roles are being done well? So, okay, we have the tasks, but how do we know if those tasks are being done well? That's part of the data piece that we're talking about now, because you have to outline what are those input and outcome metrics. I also put out an article on that, so I won't go on it too long because I know we're here for the visualization piece. Don't worry, we're getting to it, but this has to be clear. Otherwise, when I leave time for Q&A, we're going to be answering the questions that I could have just addressed up front and probably need to address up front. So how do we know if these tasks are being done well? Again, each ERG role should have an input and outcome metric tied to it. Next up, how does each role tie back to the program's vision? Making that very clear. One mistake that I will say I have personally made this year even is outlining these input and outcome metrics, but not also adding in the importance of the roles, of actually hitting those input and outcome metrics and what that's doing for our overall ERG program vision. Maybe that's even confusing. Maybe I'll say it like this. You have to make it clear because, cutting to the chase, I believe ERG programs are really so deeply about community at the end of the day. Like, you have to nail this community piece for you to be able to do anything else. So at least if we're talking about building community for people who normally wouldn't have it in the workplace, how does each role tie back to helping to build community? Making that very clear. This way you don't just have metrics, but you have to tie it to why these metrics matter. Okay, that's also a skipped one that I personally have skipped too. So I'm putting it out there for you all to hopefully ease some of the stresses that I've had. Okay, well, now that you have that piece in place, now you can really bake out your data system. We'll talk more about this too, but ultimately, we know what metrics are important for each of those roles, but how will the success be tracked over time? That's different from just having, hey, this is the numbers that we're trying to see change on. We're trying to increase our event engagement score, our member engagement score, but no, how will you actually track that? beyond just a hypothetical. You need a data system. Like I said, we'll touch on that in a second. But you need that in place. Not to mention, I have a free template and mini course. That's not even in the champ space. But you should join the champ space if you want to say thank you. That's a nice way to say thank you, is by joining the champ space. Nevertheless, you need to understand how you're going to track the success of these roles over time. Then beyond that, you can now go into visualization. Okay, so we track success via our data system. Now we can go into how we visualize it. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this section, visualization is not enough. You have to be able to storytell the progress that your program has made, and also what needs to change to get your program closer and closer to its vision over time. So that brings us to number 7. And that is truly what ERG program management is it's you being the person who articulates the progress and also helps steer the ship ultimately to get closer to the vision. Or maybe I should say fly the plane based on the illustration that I'll give. Put a yes in the chat if this makes sense. I know it probably feels like we're saying the same thing over and over, but I just want to emphasize these things. I cannot emphasize them enough. Even then, last illustration, at least for this part, that I'll say. Let's just imagine, like I just said, flying the plane. Your vision is where you want to go as a program, what you're trying to accomplish for employees and for some of you for the business. But regardless, what you're trying to accomplish for employees, because I feel like accomplishing things for employees is for the business, but nevertheless, that's what your vision is. This plane in the illustration, that's your ERG program. That's where you are currently. Your program is the plane. And when it comes to visualization, that is your dashboard, your dash. Just like a plane has a dashboard full of all these gauges that help you to know if you're on track to go where you want to go. Or even when we talk about storytelling, how a dashboard will help the pilot to communicate to control. I don't know, I think that's what they call it. Whatever building they call whenever they're having issues or whenever they want to give updates. They use their dashboard to say how they're currently doing, where they're currently at. This way, control can come back to them with any recommendations, or even just so that they're aware of kind of where the plane is in general. If the plane does need to be rerouted, control will use metrics to kind of reroute the plane. In the same way, the dashboard, very much like this. Again, you have these gauges that tell you where you're currently at. When you go to speak to executives and say, hey, here's where we're at, here's where we've come from, with our plane, with our program, here's where we're going according to our metrics. They're aligned. Okay, this makes sense. And if something happens in the business where maybe the program needs to pivot a little bit, they can now give some feedback. But metrics are key. Just like a dashboard is visualized metrics, or like a literal dashboard in a plane. That's what a dashboard does for your ERG program. It just visualizes these metrics. All right, I think we get it now. I think we're on the same page. I just had to get that out of my system because, like I said, I know the questions are coming. So I'm trying to get ahead of it. Now, when it comes to data visualization, according to Wikipedia, I actually liked its definition. I'm going to read it real quick, just once for you all. Data and information visualization is the practice of designing and creating easy to communicate and easy to understand graphic or visual representations of a large amount of complex quantitative and qualitative data and information with the help of static, dynamic, or interactive visual items. So I actually did like that more than like just in general. What it's saying here is it's taking qualitative and quantitative data and it's converting it into visuals that are easy to understand more than anything. Now, with this data, though, I will say a couple of things to consider. Well, I don't want to put it. I don't even want to call this types of data, but when it comes to the data in a dashboard, let me restart that thought. When it comes to a dashboard, data visualization, there are two sides to it to know. There's the back end of a dashboard and there's the front end. I touched on the back end a little bit earlier in the presentation, but just to recap, you need a place that stores all of your data. So it's not just a matter of, and I know a lot of people say this, we have data in all these different places, and how do we tie it together? You need a backend system, a place where this data is stored, and not just stored as is. Ideally, you'll see some other words here, cleaned, organized, processed. I'll touch on that in a second, but just know at the end of the day, your data has to live somewhere on the back end. And that is essentially what is powering the front end, which is the dashboard. That's the pretty parts that you all see. So saying that again in a different way, because it's important. A lot of people think that it's just like one mechanism. There's two parts to it behind the scenes that probably the ERG program manager would manage. Okay. Some things to know about this. A system, it's called a system like that for a reason, because there's processes attached and how to manage the data, which means that, again, it's not just, hey, we have this backend system, I don't need to touch it. While, yes, after it's built, it's very easy to maintain, there is going to have to be someone responsible for moving data into this backend system. That might sound like a heavy lift. I promise you it's not. I promise you it's not. So don't feel overwhelmed. Maybe I'm just saying it wrong. Let me say this in a different way too. When it comes to this system, you all may have, if you have checked out that template that I put out here with the mini course, you'll see that there's some different data sources. So for instance, like your events reports, which will be like Teams reports, Zoom reports, your communications channel analytics. So in Slack and Teams and Viva Engage, whatever it might be, these are different data sources. Okay. It has to go into this backend system. So again, there has to be someone who just copy pastes the data. At the end of the day, that's all you're really doing. So like I said, don't feel overwhelmed, but you have to copy paste the data into this backend system. Something else to note about the backend is that the different aspects of this system, they are interdependent, which means if one thing changes on this backend system, it could potentially change some of the other results that this system gives. I'm doing air quotes, but I know you can't see, but I'm doing air quotes. Long story short, it's important that you protect your backend system, that not just anybody can get access to this backend system. Because then one small change, a change in the column on your Excel sheet, it can break your entire dashboard on the front end. Let me say this one more time too. When I say system, also probably sounds advanced. I'm talking about a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet in my case. And this is the part of the presentation where I'll just start transitioning into saying the things I'm speaking about now are things that I'm speaking to from my personal experience. I'm not saying that they are the number one best way to do it, but I'm saying this is the way that I do it, and this has worked for me. There might be a better way to do it because I'm not a data analyst. I taught myself all of this stuff, but it's been working. And even whenever I've showed this to data analysts, they're like, oh, wow, this works. So, I'll just say, even how I'm explaining it probably could be better, but hopefully this makes sense. Okay. That being said, continuing on. So we have the back end piece and then the front end piece. That is the pretty part. That's where all the charts and the buttons live. That's where it's super interactive. That's where if you update, if you add more information, if you copy paste your Zoom report into your back end, it'll automatically reflect ideally on your front end where those charts are. So those are the two parts to a dashboard. Okay. I hope we are on the same page. Actually put same page in the chat if we are on the same page and you're like, I got this. I'm excited for this next part. All right. 3 types of data. I just said it, but quick recap. You have the basic stuff like that exists in its native state. So when you download a Zoom report, and I'm just going to use Zoom and Slack for this conversation, but just know I have more information in that template course thing. But when you download a Zoom report, it's going to download as a CSV file. That is data in its natural state. It's raw data, which means that it's not organized the way that you need it to be necessarily to live in your backend system, which is your processed data. So actually, I can show this to you all live. This is good stuff. Let's do it like this. So this is actually what the template looks like. Share this tab instead. Okay, so this is what the template looks like. All right, so let's just say hypothetically, we copy and paste our Zoom information into this template, and you'll find this template. Actually, I'll put it in the chat. Actually, I'm not that advanced. Just go to the ergmovement.com and go to, actually, no, maybe I am a little bit that advanced. I don't know. Sometimes I surprise myself. Okay, so I actually do think I can put it in the chat for you all. Let's see. Just in case some of you are like, I don't know what you're looking at here. Okay, cool. So I just put the link in the chat. This way, if you don't have this data system, it is completely free because I want you all to be on the same page. So all that to say, when you copy and paste data from your Zoom report, Zoom might have it'll have these fields. So it'll tell you the names of people who joined, it'll tell you their emails, and it'll tell you how long they were on the call for. But it'll say a couple of other things too. It might say like the location that they tuned in from. It might say just a bunch of other stuff that you don't need. So when we're talking about taking raw data and turning that into processed data, that means that we're taking the parts that matter and we're organizing it into this sorted template. Okay? That's what we're saying. That's the process. So again, it might sound like a lot, but it's really super easy. And I'll just say, having managed data for multiple companies over the past year, it is actually, I'll say at most, if I were to do all of the data updates for the course of a month for a company that has, let's just say like 7 ERGs, it would probably take me maybe 30 to 45 minutes. And that's a lot. That's just like if so much happened. That's if they all had an event and something asynchronous and pulling the communications metrics and organizing them. But it still will probably take me less than an hour. And that's the benefit of having this system, a place to process data in, such as this. Okay. I hope that this is not too advanced. I'm trying to think of a word to put in the chat if we're on the same page. Just I don't know. Anyway, my brain is blank. I don't know. My brain is blank. Hopefully we're on the same page. I'll come up with a fun buzzword for the next thing. But long story short, regardless of what it looks like with these different tabs of your back end, at the end of the day, you have to move data from its natural state into this template, process it before you can create charts that visualize it. Okay. Now, when it comes to visualizing the data, there are different ways to do it. I have 6 here, I believe. I'm just going to walk through them all. And yes, I am going to walk through the actual dashboard that I have built. I do have it here for you all. All right. This is a little preview here for you. But okay, going back to this, because we're going to talk about the different ways, because maybe that's not it for you. Maybe you want your other options in terms of how you can turn this data after it is processed, keyword processed, which means that if you don't have that template filled out, you cannot have a dashboard. There's no way that you can visualize data that is not processed, or you probably can. Let me not say that, because at the end of the day, I'm not a data analyst person, but I cannot help you from that point. I only know how to tell you how to do this if you have it processed in the template. Oh, there we go. Say processed in the chat if we are on the same page with that. We have to have it processed. Awesome. Okay, so continuing on. How to visualize this data. First one that we'll talk about, the manual way. Not recommended, by the way. Hands-on, very hands-on. This is if you're saying, I don't want to use any software at all technically, because there's still a little bit of software, but I really don't want to use any software at all. I just want to use this template that I have, and I want to just make some charts out of it with nothing, with like very little effort here. What that could look like, for instance, is literally if you were to go, actually, let me go back and share. Now I'm doing this live. So if it's not perfect, it's because I actually did not rehearse this part live. But nevertheless, let's just say that hypothetically, I wanted to get some charts and some visuals to understand the breakdown of people who went to the sign language class versus who went to the comedy show for this. Okay, cool. So that being said, what I could technically do, and again, this is not rehearsed, although it probably should have been. But we're going to test it out. We're going to test it out, nevertheless. All right. So that being said, how I would normally do it is I would just highlight this. Let's just do this as a very basic one. Oh my goodness. I'm kind of nervous doing this because, again, didn't plan for it. But let's just say we want to create a quick pivot table, okay? So gonna hit, I highlighted the stuff, gonna hit insert pivot table. Again, not saying this is how you should do it. This is just a way to do it. Okay, so we're gonna put the pivot table right here. I think I'm doing this right. See, this is why I really shouldn't do things live. Hold on. This is definitely why I shouldn't do things live. Sometimes I try to get fancy and like do some fancy things. Oh, I've got it. I got it. I know what I gotta do. And we are gonna put this into a new sheet. We're gonna put it right here. Cool. We're gonna create. Awesome. I'm not doing a full walkthrough of this part because I can tell you for a fact I am not the best person to explain how to create a pivot table. But I'm just saying, just so you all can see hypothetically, you could do this without a need to do like any software at all. So okay, let's just say we want to do comedy show versus Pride, and then or versus the sign language class, and we wanted to do events. Cool, great. This is technically a visualization because it's visualizing something that was harder to take in. Like obviously I couldn't have just known 11 and 23 if I just were to look at this spreadsheet. But the pivot table, that's a way for me to visualize very easily. Okay, now I have an understanding. Now, hypothetically, you could do this manually. Again, you don't need any software. You could do it manually where you are managing all this data like this and just, I don't know, on a monthly or quarterly basis, kind of doing some breakdowns this way. Not recommended, but it's possible. I just want to put it out there. So nevertheless, it is a method. I would be, it wouldn't be right if I didn't tell you that you couldn't just do that technically. However, there are some cons to it, obviously. A lot of manual mistakes. And again, take it from me, who's done things manually before I knew that there was better ways. There's a lot of human error that you're kind of trying to adjust for. So just things there. Wouldn't really recommend it, but it is possible. You can use AI. A lot of people don't know this. Now, obviously, I feel like this is kind of obvious, but when it comes to AI, you have to be aware of the data privacy concerns, but it is possible to do. And how you would do that is if you put your things into that process place, into that backend system, into that spreadsheet or Google Sheet. So you clean and format your data, you can download it, and you can actually upload it right into ChatGPT. So let me just put it out there. If your company has things around data, which it should, and honestly, even I'll say in general, I wouldn't put this into the general ChatGPT. I would probably use this in your company's instance of ChatGPT if they have one specific for like things that you can do internally, or anonymize the data. That might be a little advanced, but you can anonymize the data and put it into ChatGPT. But look, I'm not trying to get in trouble with your companies, so just know it's possible, not necessarily the preferred way. Okay, cool. what can you do? So I just did this last night with this sample template here. So what I did was I uploaded the CSV that had the membership data, and I said how many people are in ERG1 versus ERG2. It gave me the answer. Let's just say I wanted to know, well, obviously some of these people are in both. So how many people in total are there in the program, but unique? So not double counting anyone. And it gave me that answer too. So it can do some advanced things. I even used this last year when breaking down the data for the representation of Fortune 500 companies that have ERGs, and there's some advanced stuff it can tell you. And yes, it can create charts for you. This might be a little confusing. I don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But yes, it actually created a chart. And I did have one line on there that says ERG3, but no one's on that line, so that's why it says 0%. But just know this is actually accurate. So, and it was just a simple prompt. And I'm gonna, for those of you who are in the champ space, or feel free to just take a picture of the slide. There are some kind of cool prompts that you can use to create this in AI. Okay, continuing on, because I've done so much talking. I can't believe we only have 10 minutes left. All right, obviously, pros, it's mostly free. I have the paid version of ChatGPT, so I don't know if this is possible without the paid version, but the paid version is like $30, so it's still doable. But biggest thing, is your company going to allow this? So, not to mention, it's not interactive or anything like that. Google Sheets. A lot of people don't know that in Google Sheets and in Excel, you can build a full dashboard. And I'm not just talking about something small. I mean a full dashboard, okay? And actually, I should have had this up. But I will just say it is advanced. I don't recommend it. And how we talked about how in those backend sheets things can break. Oh boy, when I tell you, can they break when they are in a Google Sheet? For an example, and actually I just pulled this up on my screen. So we're just going to do this like live. I just Googled this. This is an example of a dashboard that's in a Google Sheet, okay? Very pretty. It's advanced, but this is not easy. I cannot emphasize this enough. It exists as a method, but I don't recommend it unless you're like a data expert. And probably if you're on this call and just being in the space of ERGs in general, probably not. Nor do we have time to learn all these things, but it is possible. I do want to just put it out there. I cannot help you with that. I tried it and it was so much of a headache. I was no longer interested in it at all. Okay, visualization software. And there are a ton of different ones, and even a lot of like free ones. The ones that I specifically focus on are Looker Studio and Power BI. I love Looker Studio because I'm a Google girly, but also I know how to build them or how to have them build at least in Power BI. So what I essentials when it comes to visualize software, lots of pros, and this is why I truly promote it. Not just because yes, I can build it for you, and we do have that service where it's pretty easy. But even then, truly as a program manager, when I had to build this myself, outside of yes, you have to learn some things. But it's a great skill to have. So I do recommend if you do have some bandwidth, really diving into like using something as simple as Looker Studio or Power BI, which does the same thing on the Microsoft side and is completely free. Now, oh, wrong way. ERG softwares, we don't even have time to dive into it. And also, if you know me, you know I'm not a fan. I don't believe that ERG should be spending their money on softwares. I just don't, because there's so many things that already exist at their fingertips, whether it is things like Looker Studio, Power BI, whether it is using your Slack more like just better, using Slack spaces because they have so many features, using your intranet pages better. There's ways to just do it for so much less money. And I feel like investing in things that don't actually move the needle it's not healthy for a program. Nevertheless, if you know me, you already know I'm not a big fan. And I'm happy. I love talking about how you can optimize your ERG program and get more out of what you currently have. Maximization. And lastly, you can also have your team, your people ops team to build you a dashboard. And there are a handful of organizations, shouts out to you all if you're on this call, who I've seen do this. Okay. And so it's possible. We're, again, completely free. You can have your team just build you a dashboard. However, I will say when it comes to having your team build you a dashboard, you don't want to go to them empty handed with no back end system. Do your homework, aka fill out that template that I put out there for free. Happy to help hop on a call with your team and help paint the picture of what you're looking for. But honestly, I would say if it's possible, if your people ops team is willing to support in a way, I will probably lean into that. And truly, for anyone who's on this call, I know we talked about a lot. That is the end of the presentation. So I technically did get through it in the 1 hour, but I just want to close out with saying, if right now you don't have any data, just curious, like what's your end goal there? Because I know that you can't do this forever. And even then, for you who do have like a software and things like that, which are, they could be better. I'm not even going to say that they're good. They could be a lot better with the metrics. Honestly, what is the end goal? Are you tying yourself to this ERG software forever? Or are you going to actually start like setting up your ERG program to have its own ecosystem of success, which is truly the future that I see for an ERG program that is lasting, is having something. And again, using what they currently have handy. Hopefully this was helpful. Well, for those of you, again, Maceo Owens, and this recording will be available within the ERG Champs space. And this is the conclusion to data month or months. We had actually technically 2 months of reviewing ERG data and just all things. I've put out so many resources. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, tomorrow's newsletter is going to recap everything that we've put out there. And if you have any questions, also for those of you who submitted questions, well, for this session too, hopefully there wasn't too many questions here because I'm so sorry I did not see them or go into them. Oh, I did see one question from Brett. When managing multiple ERGs, is it better to have a purpose, a single purpose, or one for all ERGs? Your program should have a vision. Each ERG is ultimately a component, a franchise of the program. So to answer that question, hopefully, I think that was the only question that I saw. Feel free to reach out. If you have any questions, message me on LinkedIn. If you're interested in the dashboard, one more time for the one time, if y'all want to see what it looks like. If you're interested, message me. Happy to share with you how you can get this by next week. Very simple. Very, very, very simple. And honestly, I've been told I should charge way more for this. So just putting it out there. You could. Anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. Looking forward to what is to come. And I think that is all. I'll catch you all next month for Community Month, where we're really going to be diving into the fact that your whole ERG program is based on the fact of having strong communities. Simple principle, but I think we have a lot to cover. So I will catch you all next month.